Officer Ronald Fisher always kept it simple. Collect protection money, keep the outsiders quiet, and remind everyone who owned the streets. For years, that formula worked flawlessly, until he picked the wrong person to harass. Now, a retired mechanic named Freddie Lewis, who once did 2 tours and refused to bend the knee, sits in a holding cell on bogus charges. Fisher might think it's business as usual, but the phone call that old mechanic made? It wasn't to some cut-rate lawyer, it was to his daughter, Colonel Ebony Cross, the deadliest Delta Force commander the Army ever had. And when this highly decorated black woman, trained to thrive in every war zone on Earth, receives news her father's behind bars, the crooked cops of Fairbridge will find out real fast that some nightmares aren't born. They're forged in battle. In Fairbridge, fear doesn't wear a badge anymore. It's coming in combat boots, and it's about to make every dirty officer wish they had never stepped onto Ebony's battlefield. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from. And if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you subscribe, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. In Fairbridge, authority came with a simple creed: keep your head down, keep silent, and never challenge a police uniform. The city's worn-down neighborhoods lived under decades of intimidation, with official power twisted into a money-making weapon. Violent busts and false charges propped up the ones in command, while hapless individuals without resources had no hope of justice. Everyone learned to survive in the shadows. Then Freddie Lewis forgot to remain invisible. An aging Army vet who'd lost his livelihood and was now tinkering with cars in a shabby auto shop, he stepped out of line when he demanded an explanation for a shakedown gone wrong. 2 days later, bruised and battered, Freddie ended up behind bars. But the corrupt lieutenant on duty had no idea who was waiting on the other end of Freddie's one phone call. Colonel Ebony Cross, ex-Delta Force commander, had believed she'd seen every horror the world could offer: insurgents in abandoned deserts, close-quarter combat in unknown jungles, covert raids behind enemy lines. She never imagined she'd face a new fight on the very streets she once defended. But Ebony's not coming alone. The phone lines are burning. The Army is awake, and a scheme that's rotted Fairbridge to its core will be ripped out by the root. The city's skyline flickers against a clouded sky, neon lights casting a fluorescent haze over cracked sidewalks. Graffiti mars the underpasses, sirens warble in the distance, a near-constant soundtrack reminding citizens that order is enforced by intimidation. Under one such overpass, Ebony Cross stands near a circle of veterans. Her posture is slightly angled, boots planted firmly, a stance that once struck fear into insurgents overseas, and now she's confronting a new battlefield, an urban jungle straining beneath corruption and fear. She came to these dark, trash-strewn corners after hearing about the homeless encampments, searching for clues to connect the dots of a system that locked her father away. Her father, Freddie, an Army mechanic in Vietnam, then a dedicated machinist for 30 years, had never broken a law in his life, so how did he get pegged for drug possession and resisting arrest? Ebony intends to find out, and she doesn't wait for permission. She passes out bottled water and listens carefully to the men and women gathered around a sputtering barrel fire. Among them is Eddie, an older man with a prosthetic arm that doesn't quite fit. He speaks with hushed urgency, describing how the local police have systematically terrorized the area. Ebony's posture stiffens as each detail emerges. How Officer Ronald Fisher and his partner, Officer Elena Garrett, routinely show up under the guise of health inspections, confiscate meager belongings, or worse. Ebony's jaw tightens with every story. She's no stranger to intimidation tactics, but hearing them used against veterans who risked their lives for their country only fuels her resolve. Across the street sits a run-down diner that glows faintly in the night. 2 patrol cars rest out front, engine lights off, as if lying in wait. Ebony narrows her eyes. She knows the pattern. Spot a vulnerable target, move in quietly, and ensure no one else intervenes. Another lesson from her combat days: never let the enemy see your fear. She squares her shoulders and walks directly into the diner, ignoring the startled glances. Fisher sits at the far booth, arms stretched across the seat, a self-satisfied grin plastered on his face. Garrett sits beside him, stirring her coffee with a spoon, eyes scanning the place for potential threats. They don't notice Ebony at first. She's just another nobody, clad in a worn jacket over civilian clothes that hide the array of scars and a service tattoo on her left bicep. Ebony quietly slides onto a stool at the counter, ordering a black coffee. Then she hears Garrett's mocking laugh. "You see that group under the overpass last night?" Garrett snorts. "I swear they're breeding. One night you have 10 vagrants, the next you have 15. Doesn't matter, makes for an easy pay." Fisher smirks. "They'll scatter soon enough. It's not like they have anywhere else to go." Ebony clenches her jaw, carefully controlling her breathing. In Delta Force, she learned how to wait, how to strike only when the advantage was certain. She sips her coffee and notes every word. She doesn't confront them yet. She's not prepared with evidence. More importantly, she wants to locate the root of this corruption. If these two are small cogs in a larger operation, there's someone bigger pulling the strings. She glances at her phone, verifying the text from an unknown contact. "Have proof your father was set up. Meet me tomorrow at Pier 19. Trust no one." Ebony's not one to trust shadowy sources, but she's desperate for leads. She stands and drops a few bills on the counter, ignoring Fisher and Garrett as she exits. Outside, the air is crisp, the wind carrying distant echoes of traffic. Ebony strides past a battered sedan. Behind its tinted windows sits a figure. She can sense the presence rather than see it, a faint outline of motion. She keeps walking without pause, an old instinct. Never show you're aware of a tail. Once she rounds a corner, though, Ebony darts into an alley, pressing her back against the damp brick. She listens. Footsteps approach, cautious but not military precise. She leaps out, seizing a wiry man by the collar. His eyes widen with fear. "Who sent you?" Ebony demands, voice low and lethal. He stammers. I saw you at the overpass. Thought maybe you could help. Heard you're Army? One of the tough ones?" Ebony relaxes her grip only slightly. "Start talking." The man introduces himself as Jacoby Sims, formerly 101st Airborne. He recognized Ebony's bearing, caught a glimpse of her uniform tattoo when she handed out water. He swears he's been following her because he wants to show her what's really happening across the city. Hush money, forced evictions, the police in league with real estate developers. He begs Ebony to come with him to a building a few blocks away. She hesitates, but something in Jacoby's eyes, haunted, sincere, makes her follow. Jacoby leads her to an abandoned tire shop. They pass through a door with a busted lock, stepping inside a dimly lit office. Cobwebs hang from corners, and the stale air reeks of dust. On a desk lies a battered laptop, along with photos pinned to a corkboard. Jacoby points to them. Images of a certain Captain Alicia Rutledge of the Fairbridge Police Department, meeting with a man Ebony doesn't recognize. The man is tall, wearing expensive suits, name rumored to be Carter Hansen, a powerful local developer with rumored criminal ties. Another photo shows Officer Fisher shaking hands with Hansen near a black SUV. "All this time, I've been collecting pictures," Jacoby whispers. "Everyone's scared. If you talk, you vanish, or you get pinned with a felony." Ebony's gaze travels across the photos. She spots one of Freddie, her father, outside his auto shop. Next to him stands Fisher, leaning in as if issuing a threat. Ebony's stomach twists. "How did you get these?" she asks. Jacoby shrugs. "I live on the rooftop sometimes. Keep watch. I've seen you can't trust anyone in the police. My only hope was that someone from the outside might come and help." Ebony exhales, feeling an old, familiar adrenaline surge. This is not a mission assigned by the Army. It's far more personal. She needs to piece together a bulletproof case, or her father remains behind bars. She glances at Jacoby's computer, sees grainy video files labeled with dates, times, and names. She quietly nods. This might be exactly the proof she needs. They spend the next 2 hours reviewing footage. Some are short clips capturing Fisher and Garrett roughing up homeless individuals. One shows them torching a cluster of tents by an underpass. Another is from 3 nights ago, in shaky focus. Fisher slamming Freddie Lewis against a patrol car, planting a small bag in Freddie's jacket. Ebony swallows hard, fury constricting her throat. That's the moment her father's fate was sealed. She clenches her fists, nails digging into her palms. "We have to get this to someone we can trust," Ebony says through gritted teeth. Jacobo's face is uncertain. Who? FBI? The local field office is rumored to have connections with Hansen. Maybe the state troopers? Or the press? Ebony steels herself. No. There's only one person I trust with this. She lifts her phone, scrolling through old contact codes. Many are outdated, missions that ended. Then she finds a name. General Samantha Harrington. Her old superior, now a high-ranking official with major influence. Ebony once saved Harrington's life in a hostage extraction. She has faith Harrington won't let her father's injustice stand. Ebony fires off an encrypted message, including a snippet of Jacoby's evidence. She sets the phone down, heart pounding. Would Harrington respond? Ebony can't be sure. Turning back to Jacoby, Ebony's voice is calm, but laced with an undercurrent of command. We keep this quiet. Keep collecting what you can. If anything happens to me, get these videos somewhere safe. Jacoby nods, swallowing. They've already threatened me once. If they catch me... Ibn's gaze is unwavering. They won't. I promise. Leaving the abandoned tire shop, Ebony steps into the cold night, hearing the faint rumble of traffic overhead. She glances at the battered phone her father used for years, now in her pocket. A single text message from him before he was arrested. Stay safe, my lioness. She remembers how he used to call her that after her first deployment. Her father always believed Ebony was unstoppable. She wills that confidence to carry her forward. At sunrise, Ebony rents a small motel room in a quieter part of town. She rarely needs sleep, trained as she is, but exhaustion from rage and heartbreak weighs her down. Her mind races with possibilities. How deep does this corruption run? Captain Rutledge? Carter Hansen? She thinks about the real estate angle, how neighborhoods are systematically emptied to push property values for development. She thinks about the shadowy code she's heard repeated. We take out the trash so you can build your empire. People are the trash. The notion sickens her. Just as she sets her phone on the nightstand, it vibrates. She pounces on it, breath catching. A single message from an unrecognized number. Colonel Cross, got your intel. I'm on my way. We'll coordinate with federal contacts. Don't move alone. Harrington. Ebony exhales, shoulders relaxing for the first time in days. Reinforcements are coming, and she's not alone in this fight anymore. While Ebony waits, she calls her father's public defender, a kind but overworked lawyer named Rosie Chapman. Rosie confirms Freddie's hearing is a few weeks away, but the local judge is known to rule harshly on resisting arrest charges. Ebony's chest tightens. She needs to break this wide open before that hearing, or her father could end up serving years. Ebony thanks Rosie and makes a mental note. Time is short. She glances at the small stack of documents she's gathered. Photos from Jacoby, notes from homeless vets, and an affidavit from a frightened local bartender who saw Fisher plant the evidence on Freddie. By midday, Ebony heads for Pier 19 as instructed in the text from her unknown contact. She double-checks her phone. No new messages. The wind off the water is biting as she walks the length of the pier, scanning the area. Her posture is guarded, every sense on alert. The pier is mostly abandoned, with just a few fishing boats and piles of coiled ropes. A figure in a heavy hoodie waits at the end, leaning on a metal railing. Ebony slows her steps, readying to react to any threat. She stops a few paces away. I'm here, she calls out. The figure turns, revealing a woman with short-cropped hair, dark eyes, and the stance of a trained fighter. She speaks softly, voice laced with tension. Name's Sarah Boyd. I used to be a police sergeant under Captain Rutledge. It didn't take long for me to realize how filthy the system was. I tried to blow the whistle once. They threatened my little boy. She swallows. I left the force and started feeding intel to an outside investigator, but he disappeared. Ebony's eyes narrow. Why contact me? Sarah studies Ebony. I heard from people in the street. Word travels fast when you see a woman like you moving around. The rumor is, you're a soldier, high level, and you're investigating for personal reasons. That you might have enough authority to fight them. Ebony nods once. What do you have? Sarah opens a bag at her feet, pulling out a flash drive. Official data logs, patrol routes, times and places where these officers did cleanup operations. They're supposed to record them as standard policing, but the times never match official logs. And some are marked as special tasks assigned by Captain Rutledge herself. I've also got sealed documents about an upcoming development plan. Commercial complexes on land forcibly seized from small businesses. If the city council sees this, it'll blow everything wide open. Ebony eyes the flash drive. I can use this. Federal help is on the way. Sarah's gaze flickers with relief. I can't do this alone. They watch me. My son's at my sister's house for safety, but I don't know how long we can hide. Ebony sets a hand gently on Sarah's shoulder. Stay out of sight for a few days. Don't contact anyone inside the department. We'll protect your family once we have the ball rolling. Sarah exhales a shaky breath. I'll trust you. Ebony pockets the flash drive, a spark of hope flaring. The evidence is piling up. Video of police brutality, logs of suspicious patrols, real estate dealings. Once Harrington arrives, Ebony can present a compelling case for the FBI or an internal affairs crackdown, assuming no one in local government tries to bury it. Ebony's phone pings again, an untraceable number. Meet me at the old steel mill outside the city limits. Urgent. D. Ebony's lips tighten. Another puzzle piece? She wonders if D might be Damon Pride, an army buddy who went AWOL a year ago, rumored to be wandering the states. Could he possibly know something about local corruption, or is it a trap? Trusting her gut, Ebony texts Harrington, quickly sharing the new development. The reply is swift. Wait for backup. Do not engage alone. Ebony weighs her options. On the one hand, time is short, and if D has crucial info, Ebony can't afford to ignore it. On the other, she's no fool. This city is more dangerous than a war zone because the lines between ally and enemy blur. She checks the ammo in her concealed sidearm out of habit, though she hopes not to use it. Then she heads out, determined to see what the steel mill has in store. The old steel mill is a hulking ruin of metal beams and shattered windows. Weeds twist through cracks in the concrete. Ebony parks a block away, approaching on foot. The broad yard is silent except for the hiss of wind through rusted scaffolding. She circles around to a side entrance, stepping carefully over broken glass. Inside, shadows crowd the corners. The faint outline of machinery looms overhead. Then she hears footsteps echoing, a careful, deliberate tread. She slips behind a massive, rusted conveyor belt, inhaling steady breaths. A voice calls out softly, "Colonel Cross? I'm not here to harm you." Ebony steps forward, gun drawn but pointed downward. She spots a tall man in a hooded jacket. "Who are you?" she demands. He pulls back the hood, revealing a lined face and a once regulation crew cut grown out. "Damon Pride, ma'am, but you can call me D if you remember me at all. We did that joint exercise in Florida, 4 years ago? You saved my life when a live round misfired in training." Ebony narrows her eyes, scanning his features. Slowly, recognition dawns. "You vanished from the army. People said you deserted." His gaze flickers with shame. "Yes, ma'am, I was in trouble. The army found out I'd leaked intel about a warlord's deals to the press. I saw too much overseas. Saw dirty deals that compromised everything we stood for. I didn't trust the chain of command, so I ran. I've been living off the grid, moving city to city." He glances around. "And I ended up here, where the cops are just as crooked as any warlord." Ebony lowers her weapon slightly. "Why call me? I heard rumors about a tough female soldier from the Delta Force sniffing around. Then I caught a glimpse of you near the underpass, handing out water. Couldn't believe it. I was sure you'd be halfway around the world on some Black Ops mission. But word is your father got framed. I can help you." Ebony lifts an eyebrow. "How?" Damon Pride takes a cautious step forward. I used to do side jobs working as private security for one of these big real estate moguls. Carter Hansen. The man's got local officials in his pocket, from Captain Rutledge down to half the beat cops. He's paying them to scare residents away so he can swoop in and snatch the land at rock-bottom prices. Then I realized it wasn't just intimidation. People disappeared, Colonel. They were arrested on fake charges, or they had overdoses that might not have been accidental. I tried to get out quietly, but they threatened me. Ebony's nostrils flare. This lines up with other intel I've gathered. We have documents, videos. Good, Damon interrupts, but that alone might not topple Hansen. He's covered on multiple fronts. You'll need unstoppable pressure, a higher authority. Ebony's mind drifts to General Harrington, to the possibility of involving the FBI or even the Department of Defense. She wonders if there's a direct link to national security that might force the government's hand. Come with me, Ebony says. Testify. We'll get you protection. Damon's laughter is hollow. Testify? The minute I go public, Hansen will hire half a dozen mercenaries to take me out. I appreciate your optimism, Colonel, but I know how the system works. He hesitates, then exhales. Still, I'll give you everything I have. Audio recordings, transaction logs. If that's enough to put Hansen in a cell, I'll risk testifying, but only if you promise me real backup. Ebony nods, never one to make idle pledges. I'll get you that. I have a high-level contact arriving soon. Just hang tight. He jerks his head. Follow me. They move deeper into the mill, finally reaching a small makeshift living area Damon has set up. A battered laptop rests on a cinder block, a solar charger rigged to the side. Damon boots it up and opens a hidden folder. Ebony sees scanned documents with official city seals, text logs referencing development expansion, and audio files labeled Hansen meetings. The biggest surprise? A reference to Project Sentinel. Ebony frowns. She glances at Damon. You know what Project Sentinel is? He shakes his head. Some hush-hush operation Hansen is collaborating on with certain individuals in local government. That's all I could find. Ebony's gaze hardens. I intend to find out. This might go way beyond local corruption if it's codenamed. Could be federal. She makes quick copies onto a flash drive. She also photographs key pages with her phone, sending them immediately through an encrypted app to Harrington. As Ebony tucks the flash drive into a vest pocket, she hears the distant crunch of tires on gravel. Both freeze. Damon quickly kills the laptop screen. Ebony whispers, could be them, or could be an ambush. You said you were followed sometimes. He nods, sweat forming on his brow. They crouch behind metal crates. Through a gap in the broken windows, Ebony spies a dark SUV rolling to a stop. Two men step out, wearing suits but moving with the tension of armed enforcers. Ebony points to a side exit, motioning for Damon to go. She'll create a diversion. He nods, voice trembling. Be careful. Ebony stands in the open, setting her jaw and walking directly toward the men. She recognizes them from the photos pinned to Jacoby's board. Hansen's personal muscle. One raises an eyebrow. You lost, lady? This is private property. Ebony lifts her empty hands, a calm but challenging stance. We're with the Fairbridge Development Commission. Sure you are, Ebony says sarcastically. The second man steps forward, hand brushing against the holster under his jacket. Ebony's eyes flick momentarily to it, but return to his face, unblinking. We got a tip someone was trespassing, he growls. Maybe you should come with us, answer a few questions? Ebony smirks, the barest hint of a challenge. I'll pass. She shifts slightly, muscles primed. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm leaving. They try to block her path. Ebony ducks to the left, and the second man lunges, grabbing at her arm. In a flash, Ebony twists, grabs his wrist, and wrenches it behind his back with a snap that sends him howling. The first man shouts, drawing a gun. Ebony pivots behind the disabled second man, using him as a shield. She sweeps the gun aside, delivering a sharp blow to his forearm. The weapon clatters to the ground. Ebony spins, letting the second man drop to his knees. The first man scrambles for the gun, but Ebony's too fast, kicking it away. Tell Hansen, she hisses. His days here are numbered. Then, She knees him in the gut. He crumples. Ebony disappears through a side corridor, adrenaline pounding in her veins, rejoining Damon. They slip out the back exit and vanish into the surrounding industrial sprawl. They part ways 2 blocks away. Ebony instructs Damon to remain hidden while she arranges a safe house. She's not sure if those men recognized her, but she suspects they'll realize soon enough that Ebony Cross is not someone to cross. The pun is unintentional, but she almost smiles at the thought. War has come to these city streets. Ebony wonders if she's unleashing a conflict that could destroy half the city's institutions, but maybe they need some destroying. Within hours, Ebony meets up with Jacoby and hands him new footage. Her confrontation at the mill, recorded by Damon's phone from the shadows, capturing the men's faces and the license plate of their SUV. Jacoby nods grimly. I'll store it. Another piece of the puzzle. That night, Ebony returns to the motel, half expecting Harrington to be waiting. Instead, she finds a sealed envelope slipped under her door. Inside is a typed note. Think you're a hero? Don't push it, soldier girl. People get hurt. Next time, it'll be your father's life on the line. Ebony's nails dig into the paper, the fury rising in her chest. She snaps a photo of the note and sends it to Harrington. Enough is enough. She wonders if the entire local station is in on this, or if some are just too scared to speak up. Maybe there are honest cops. Ebony can't assume everyone is dirty. The next morning, Ebony receives a call from Harrington. The general's voice is firm yet urgent. I'm in Fairbridge. I have a secure location at a federal building. Bring everything you've got. We're looping in the Department of Justice. Ebony sighs in relief. At last, some official muscle. She wastes no time gathering her notes, Jacoby's photographs, Sarah's flash drive, Damon's logs, and the few stolen glimpses of hidden dealings she's compiled from the underpasses. Tucking them into a single secure bag, Ebony heads out. Fairbridge's downtown is a blend of concrete towers and neglected side streets. Ebony steps into the austere lobby of a federal office building, where a uniformed guard checks her ID. He leads her to a conference room on the 10th floor, where General Samantha Harrington awaits. Dressed in a crisp uniform, Harrington has the commanding presence Ebony recalls from their tours together. Ebony stands at attention, a throwback to old reflexes, but Harrington waves it off with a faint smile. No need for formalities, Colonel, though I see you haven't lost your discipline. Ebony relaxes slightly. Thank you for coming, General. I wasn't sure if you'd be able to. Harrington's expression grows grave. Once I heard it was you, and about your father. Ebony, you saved half our unit in Helmand Province. I owe you my life. If something's threatening you or your family, I'll walk through fire to fix it. Ebony sets the bag on the table. Here's what we have. Video, documents, sworn statements, enough to start a major investigation. Harrington motions to a woman in a dark suit sitting nearby. This is Special Agent Serena Brooks from the Department of Justice. She's read your initial intel. We're moving to escalate this. Agent Brooks nods briskly. You've compiled an impressive amount of evidence. We suspect that Carter Hansen is the main puppeteer. With the cooperation of certain police officers, he orchestrates forced evictions or arrests, effectively turning the city into a gold mine for his development schemes. Ebony crosses her arms. How quickly can we act? My father's hearing is in a few weeks, and they threatened his life. Brooks meets Ebony's eyes. We can move faster if we get a formal statement from multiple witnesses. If you can convince Damon Pride and Sarah Boyd to come forward, we can request immediate federal protection for them and for your father. Ebony exhales, relief flooding her. I'll talk to them. And there's a local policeman, Sam Alvarez, I suspect might be honest. He got injured in the line of duty a year ago, but came back quietly. People said he hates what's happening. Maybe he'll help. Harrington nods. We'll coordinate a safe house. Meanwhile, Ebony, the more you discover about Project Sentinel, the better. If it's tied to national interests, we can bring in more resources. Ebony's phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. They're taking out your father tomorrow morning for a transfer. If you don't back down, it'll be his last ride. Ebony's pulse spikes. She shows Harrington. Harrington's face sets with grim resolve. They can't just kill a prisoner without consequences. But these people are desperate. We'll file an immediate motion with the federal judge to block any inmate transfers. Agent Brooks, handle that." Brooks rushes to make calls. In the next few hours, Ebony calls Damon, Sarah, and Jacoby, urging them to meet at the federal building. Jacoby insists he's better off staying in the shadows, but Ebony manages to convince him that federal protection is the only way to ensure the safety of everyone who shared info with him. Damon, after a long silence, agrees as well. Sarah's voice shakes, but she says she'll bring her child. Ebony assures them this is the turning point. As evening falls, Ebony finds herself back near the underpass, double-checking the situation with the homeless vets. She hands out more water, feeling the stares of half-trusting, half-hopeful eyes. Eddie, the man with the prosthetic arm, murmurs, "We hear you got big connections. You gonna fix this city for us?" Ebony's heart tugs. "I can't fix everything," she admits, "but we're trying to yank out the weeds. If we succeed, the city council will have to address homelessness properly." Eddie's lined face softens. "You're the first one to see us as people, not trash." Ebony nods quietly, thinking that no matter how tough her Delta Force training was, this might be her hardest mission, fighting a system from within. She's about to leave when her phone lights up again, a private number. Ebony answers, and a woman's voice hisses urgently, "This is Sergeant Elena Garrett. Don't hang up." Ebony's eyes go wide. Garrett, Fisher's partner, the one she overheard mocking homeless vets in the diner. Ebony's first instinct is anger, but Garrett's tone is different now, tinged with desperation. "Why are you calling me?" Ebony demands, moving aside from the crowd to keep the conversation private. Garrett's voice trembles. "I did bad things, but I'm in too deep. Fisher threatened my family if I didn't follow his lead. That note you got, it wasn't from me, but I know Fisher's behind it. Listen, he's planning something big. He's meeting with Captain Rutledge tonight at that old bar, the Copper Rail, out near the city border. I think they might try to move your father, or worse, set up a fatal escape attempt. I can't watch it happen. You have to stop them." Ebony's blood runs cold. "So help me, come forward. Turn yourself in." Silence crackles. I'm afraid, if I show up at the DOJ building, it's over for me. The entire precinct will brand me a traitor, but I can't stand by any longer." Ebony sets her jaw. "You want to make it right. Give me everything. Times, names, proof of corruption. Help me protect my father." Garrett exhales shakily. "I'll text you the details of the meeting, but be careful. Rutledge keeps everything hush-hush. If you show up, they'll see it as an act of war." The call ends, leaving Ebony's heart thudding. She texts Harrington, but the general urges Ebony not to engage alone. Ebony knows that's wise, but there's no time to assemble a federal task force for a clandestine bar meeting. Ebony might be able to slip in, record evidence, and slip out. Another typical infiltration mission, except now the targets are cops. She steels herself, telling Harrington, "I'm going in. I'll be careful." Harrington's exasperation is palpable. Ebony can almost hear the general's muttered curses at her stubbornness, but Ebony has no other leads. 2 hours later, Ebony stands outside the Copper Rail, an old dive bar with a flickering neon sign. She's changed into dark clothes, blending with the night, and approaches from the side alley. The windows are grimy, but she catches a glimpse of uniformed figures inside, along with a shadowy group at the back booth. Carefully, Ebony slips to the rear entrance. A rickety wooden door is locked, so she picks it with practiced ease, sliding inside. She creeps through a dim hallway lined with stacked crates. Low music spills from the front. She positions herself behind a half-open door that leads to a tiny storage room. From there, she can hear voices in the bar's back booth. Slowly, Ebony raises her phone to record, cursing the poor angle. She can't see them clearly, but the audio might be enough. Captain Rutledge's voice is cold and commanding. "We can't let that soldier keep stirring trouble." Hanson's furious. He demands we clean it up tonight. Fisher growls, "We'll handle her the same way we handled that old man, but we gotta move fast. The feds are sniffing around. We might have a rat in the precinct." Rutledge spits. "Garrett's been acting weird. If she's the leak, I'll deal with her personally." Fisher slams a glass down. "And the father? The plan's to transfer him at dawn. He'll catch a bullet before he sees the next jail cell. I have men on the inside who'll make it look like he tried to escape. Ebony's heart pounds, righteous rage flooding her. They're planning to execute her father. She edges forward, straining to hear if there's more. Rutledge continues. Hansen wants to ensure no blowback lands on him, so we pin it on the father. A suicidal ex-soldier. No one will question it. Fisher snickers. I'd love to see that woman's face when she hears the news. Ebony's hands shake with fury, gripping the phone as she records every vile word. Suddenly, footsteps approach from the other direction. Ebony leaps behind a crate just as a bar staffer wanders through, picking up some boxes. The staffer glances around suspiciously, but doesn't spot Ebony. When he leaves, Ebony realizes the conversation in the booth has ended. She peeks around the corner, sees Rutledge and Fisher heading for the side exit. Ebony doesn't dare confront them now. She's outnumbered, lacking official backup. She'll have to get this evidence to Harrington immediately, then stop the transfer by force of law. She retreats into the alley, breath quick. She hurries to her car, mind racing. The phone in her pocket holds the damning confession of an assassination plot. Ebony dials Harrington right away. General, I have audio. They plan to kill my father at dawn, stage it as an escape. We need to move. Harrington curses softly. I'll alert Agent Brooks. We'll get an emergency injunction on the transfer. Keep that audio safe. And Ebony, please don't do anything reckless. Let the feds handle the extraction. Ebony grits her teeth. She trusts Harrington, but time is dangerously short if the local system is as compromised as it seems. Might the jail staff ignore federal orders? Ebony calls Rosie Chapman, her father's lawyer, explaining the new threat. Rosie is horrified and says she'll alert the judge, but Ebony senses Rosie's influence is limited. Ebony finishes the call, knuckles white on the steering wheel. If official channels fail, Ebony will have to break her father out to save his life. Before dawn breaks, Ebony convenes with Harrington, Agent Brooks, and a small cadre of trustworthy law enforcement at the federal building. The plan is to serve immediate federal writs blocking all prisoner transfers at the local jail. The feds will escort Ebony's father out under protective custody, removing him from local jurisdiction. Ebony can hardly breathe with tension as Harrington finishes briefing the team. When they arrive at the jail, a line of local squad cars is parked out front. Ebony spots Fisher's patrol car among them. Captain Rutledge stands at the entrance, arms folded, expression stony. The feds approach with official documents, demanding compliance. Rutledge's jaw works in suppressed rage, but in the face of federal authority, she has no immediate recourse. Ebony and Agent Brooks rush inside, searching for Freddie Lewis's cell. They pass rows of grimy bars, hearing inmates muttering and guards shifting restlessly. Ebony's heart hammers, worried she might be too late. Finally, they reach a corridor where two uniformed guards stand, looking nervous. Ebony sees the cell. Freddie sits on a bench, bruises still visible on his face, but he's alive, eyes widening when he spots his daughter. Ebony exhales a tremulous breath of relief. "Dad?" she whispers. Freddie stands pressed against the bars. "Ebony? What?" She forces a smile. "I'm getting you out of here." Agent Brooks waves a sheaf of papers at the guards. "Federal order. Open it." The guards exchange glances, but Rutledge storms in, voice echoing off the walls. "This is my jail, my officer. You have no right." Harrington steps forward, uniform radiating command. "Captain Rutledge, you will stand down or face immediate arrest for obstruction of justice. We have audio of your conversation last night. Don't test us." Rutledge's eyes blaze with hatred, but she knows she's cornered. She gestures for the guards to comply. The cell door swings open, and Freddie staggers out, tears of relief in his eyes. Ebony restrains her impulse to embrace him. Time is critical. "We need to go, Dad," she murmurs, supporting him. They escort Freddie outside. The sun's just rising over the horizon, painting the sky with pink and orange streaks. Ebony wonders how many times her father dreamed of freedom while locked up. As they approach the federal SUVs, a shot rings out from somewhere across the lot. Chaos erupts. Ebony hears the bullet ricochet off the vehicle's door. She drops, pulling Freddie down. Harrington barks for everyone to take cover. Federal agents draw weapons, scanning the rooftops. Ebony glimpses a muzzle flash from the top of a nearby parking structure. Another shot pings off the concrete. Agent Brooks grabs a radio, screaming for a sniper unit. Ebony's instincts kick in, adrenaline surging. She's unarmed except for a sidearm, but this is a sniper scenario. She peers at the building, noting the angle and distance. Maybe 150 meters away, partial cover from the ledge. Ebony's father is wide-eyed with terror, but Ebony squeezes his shoulder. "Stay behind the SUV." She leaps up, sprinting across a small open space to a row of parked cars. Bullets crack around her, but Ebony's training is second nature. She zigzags, crouches behind a sedan. Now she's closer to the structure. She sees a fire escape ladder on the side. If she can get up there, she might flank the shooter. Harrington yells after her, but Ebony's not stopping. She leaps onto the ladder, climbing swiftly as more shots echo. The bullet whizzes past, chipping concrete. Ebony hauls herself onto the second level of the parking structure, crouching behind a half wall. The sniper hasn't moved. She glimpses a silhouette near a concrete pillar. Ebony creeps forward in a low crawl, mindful of every step. This is exactly what she trained for in Delta Force. Silent infiltration under fire. When she's within 15 yards, Ebony stands, pointing her sidearm. "Drop it!" she barks. The figure whirls. A masked man with a scoped rifle. He tries to swing the muzzle, but Ebony fires once, aiming at his shoulder. He spins with a cry, dropping the rifle. Ebony charges, disarming him and kicking the weapon aside. She rips the mask off, revealing Officer Ronald Fisher. Eyes wild with desperation. "You," Ebony snarls. "You were going to murder my father. Murder me. Murder anyone who got in your way." Fisher spits blood, clutching his bleeding shoulder. "You think you're some hero? You're nothing but a meddler. This city—" Ebony cuts him off with a savage glare. "Save it for your cell," she calls down to the agents. "I've got him." They scramble up, cuffing Fisher as paramedics arrive. Ebony stares coldly at the man who nearly stole her father's life. "You messed with the wrong soldier." That afternoon at the federal building, Ebony watches from an observation window as Fisher is interrogated. He's in agony, both from the gunshot wound and from the knowledge that his plan fell apart. Agent Brooks methodically extracts details. Meanwhile, Harrington steps out of another interrogation room, expression grim. "Rutledge is trying to cut a deal. She's naming names. Carter Hansen, several city officials, possibly more. We're building a major corruption case." Ebony nods, anger still simmering in her veins. "Fisher tried to assassinate us in broad daylight. This is bigger than I thought." Harrington rubs her temples. "We'll get them all, Ebony, one by one." Freddie, now under protective custody, remains in the building for safety. He sits quietly in a break room, sipping coffee with trembling hands. Ebony watches him from the hallway, remembering the carefree father who once built model airplanes with her. She steels herself with the knowledge that at least he's safe now. Over the next days, as the case widens, Ebony orchestrates witness protection for Damon Pride, Sarah Boyd, Jacoby Sims, and others. With their testimonies, the DOJ issues warrants for multiple high-ranking figures. Ebony sees news headlines plastered across local channels. Fairbridge police scandal, city officials under corruption probe, high-profile developer Carter Hansen named as suspect. Public outcry explodes. People flood the streets, demanding reform. Ebony stands in the background, refusing interviews, letting Harrington and the feds handle the spotlight. She has never been one to chase attention, only to finish the mission. Hansen is the last piece of the puzzle. The FBI tracks him to a private villa on the outskirts of Fairbridge. Early one morning, Ebony joins the team as an advisor, not to take part in the takedown physically, but to share her infiltration expertise. The feds swarm the villa, capturing Hansen as he attempts to flee in a sleek black car. Ebony watches from a distance, letting the federal agents lead him away in cuffs. Relief courses through her. This man funded the terror that nearly destroyed her father's life. He'll face charges ranging from conspiracy to racketeering. The city's leadership shakes to its core. In the days that follow, Ebony's father's charges are dismissed. A judge apologizes formally, though Ebony notes how reluctant that apology sounds. Freddie is free, but the scars remain, both physical and emotional. Ebony vows to help him heal, to restore his beloved auto shop if possible. Meanwhile, the homeless encampments see a surge of reporters and philanthropic organizations. Politicians scramble to donate, claiming innocence, while truth seekers unearth every hidden detail. Ebony knows real change comes slowly, but at least the door is open. At a battered community center, Ebony meets with a group of local veterans. Among them is Eddie, the man with the prosthetic arm, who stands proudly in front of a new resource office set up by federal grants Harrington arranged. Ebony's chest constricts with a mix of pride and sadness. She sees men and women who served, cast aside by the system, now finally recognized. A sign outside reads, "Fairbridge Veterans Outreach, no one left behind." Ebony can't help but smile at the echo of the Army motto she lived by for years. One evening, Ebony stands alone on a quiet street corner. The sun sets, leaving a hush over the city. She glances at the bleak silhouette of the jail where her father languished, then at the flicker of hope in the reopened homeless shelter across the block. Much has changed in a short time. She receives a text from Harrington. "Returning to D.C. Proud of you. The city owes you more than it knows." Ebony tucks the phone away, letting the gratitude sink in. She never fought for accolades, but Harrington's words mean more than any medal. A day before Ebony plans to depart, she visits the prison where Ronald Fisher is held. The guards watch her warily, but let her in to the visitation room. She steps through the door, posture straight, expression unreadable. Fisher, wearing an orange jumpsuit, sits at a metal table, left arm in a sling from his gunshot wound. His eyes flick up, filled with resentment. Ebony says nothing at first, taking a seat across from him. She studies the man who terrorized innocents for years. At last, she speaks quietly. "Why did you do it? Was it just for money, or did you actually enjoy hurting people you deemed weaker?" Fisher's face twists. He looks away. "You come here for an apology? Don't hold your breath." Ebony's tone is measured. "I don't expect remorse from someone like you, but I want you to understand that every step I took to bring you down was in the name of real justice, something you, as a cop, were sworn to uphold." His eyes bore into hers, a flicker of guilt overshadowed by anger. "A soldier like you doesn't know what it's like to patrol these streets every day." Ebony cuts him off. "Actually, I do. Different streets maybe, but the same fight. Corruption, violence, oppression. But I had something you don't. A moral compass. So did a lot of decent cops in this city." Fisher slumps, exhaling. "Doesn't matter. I'm done." Ebony rises. "Yes, you are." As she leaves, she's oddly calm, feeling a sense of finality. Fisher is just one piece of the puzzle, yet symbolic of how far the rot extended. She hopes the city's next wave of officers will learn from this tragedy. Outside, Ebony meets her father, who stands leaning on a cane, a temporary necessity from the beating he endured. Freddie gives her a soft smile. "All these years, you protected the nation. Now you protected me. I don't know how to thank you." Ebony wraps him in a hug, feeling the warmth of his presence. "You already did. You taught me to never back down." They drive to the spot where Freddie's auto shop once stood. It's boarded up, a sign reading, "Under inspection by federal oversight." Ebony glances at her father's pained expression. "We'll rebuild," she says softly. "You'll have customers lined up around the block once they know the Lewis name stands for honesty." He nods, tears shining in his eyes. Ebony lays a hand on his shoulder. This city might finally see that integrity matters. Over the next few weeks, Ebony stays to help finalize witness testimonies. Damon Pride officially surrenders, giving a full statement in exchange for protection. Sarah Boyd testifies about Captain Rutledge's direct orders. Jacoby Sims provides additional footage to both local and national media outlets. The story gains national attention. Delta Force Colonel brings down corrupt department. Ebony keeps out of the limelight as much as possible, but every reporter begs for an interview. She politely declines. She's not here for fame. She's here because a father's life was threatened, and her sense of duty refused to let that stand. Eventually, trials commence. High-profile trials that unearth staggering corruption. Carter Hansen is charged with conspiracy to commit organized crime, attempted murder by proxy, and a litany of financial crimes. Rutledge faces similar charges plus additional counts of orchestrating violent acts under color of law. Garrett, trembling, testifies about how Fisher blackmailed her, though the prosecution remains unconvinced about her level of involvement. Ebony feels a pang of sympathy for Garrett, who is neither fully guilty nor innocent, trapped between fear and complicity. A jury must decide her fate. Fisher's trial is the most sensational. Footage of him planting evidence on Freddie is played in court, as well as the audio capturing his plan to kill Ebony's father during a prisoner transfer. He attempts to claim he was following orders from Rutledge, but the prosecution eviscerates his defense. The verdict: guilty on all counts, including conspiracy to commit murder. As Fisher is led away in handcuffs, Ebony closes her eyes, breathing a sigh of relief. One more threat removed from Fairbridge's future. In the aftermath, the local homeless community sees an outpouring of resources. The new interim police chief publicly apologizes, promising major reform. Ebony stands on the periphery of a press conference, reading the sorrow and hope etched on the faces of the men and women who lived under oppression for so long. She thinks of the battered underpasses, the flimsy tents, the men and women who braved the elements alone. She hopes they'll finally receive the respect they deserve. As Ebony packs her bag in the modest apartment she rented, her father sits at the small kitchen table, fiddling with an engine part. "You're leaving?" he asks quietly. She nods. "Harrington's heading back to D.C. and wants me to come along. There's talk about a possible position for me, maybe returning to some specialized role. But, Dad, if you need me..." Freddie shakes his head. "No, baby girl, I'll be okay. I've got free legal help now, and the auto shop insurance might cover a rebuild. It's time you do what you do best. Protect others. This city owes you, but I know you won't stick around for the praise." Ebony smiles softly, stepping over to kiss his forehead. "I'll visit soon, and if anything happens, you call me immediately." Freddie's eyes glisten, but he nods. "I'm proud of you, Ebony. Always have been." Later that day, Ebony accompanies Harrington to the now famous homeless shelter that's receiving new funds. They admire the expansion plans, the job training center for veterans. Ebony notices Eddie, the prosthetic armed vet, showing a newly arrived group where to stow their belongings. She smiles. The community is healing. Harrington's phone rings, and the general steps aside, leaving Ebony to wander near a new bronze plaque. It reads, "For those who served and were forgotten, we stand with you." Ebony's throat tightens. This is the legacy she wanted, more than medals or parade banners, a real difference in people's lives. Harrington returns, expression thoughtful. "We need your expertise, Ebony. The Army can always use a Delta Force warrior unafraid of the hardest missions." Ebony lowers her gaze, remembering the exhaustion of endless deployments. "General, I'm not sure. There's so much left undone here. Veterans still falling through the cracks, people still traumatized by the corruption. Maybe my calling is to help from the ground up." Harrington's eyes glimmer with understanding. "You saved an entire city from itself, Ebony. Wherever you go, I'll support you. Just know you have a place in the military if you want it." Ebony nods quietly, mind swirling with possibilities. For the first time since leaving Delta Force, she feels the pull of a new mission, fighting for those who can't fight for themselves. She glances at Harrington. "If the Army has a program bridging the gap between vets and local communities, that might be where I belong. I know how to spot trouble, how to connect with those the system ignores." Harrington smiles. "I think we can arrange something exactly like that." When Ebony steps outside, the sky is bright, the city's smog seeming less oppressive. She spots Jacoby walking by, camera in hand, now an official volunteer for a local advocacy group. He gives her a small nod, gratitude evident in his eyes. Further down the street, Damon Pride, accompanied by 2 FBI agents, disappears into a safe car that will transport him to a new location. Ebony salutes him in her mind, hoping he'll find redemption. Near the corner, Sarah Boyd escorts her son to a bus, the tension in her face replaced by a fragile hope. Ebony's chest warms at the transformations unfolding before her. On her last evening in Fairbridge, Ebony wanders to a quiet spot along the river. She recalls her Delta Force days, breaching compounds, extracting hostages, narrowly escaping fire. This city's fight felt equally lethal, but it ended with real lives changed. She thinks about the homeless vets who embraced her as one of their own. The day she arrived, she was just another stranger. Now, at least some of them have a bed in a safe shelter and a sense that not everyone has abandoned them. Her phone buzzes, a text from an unknown contact. "We owe you everything, Colonel. This city might never fully repay you, but we'll never forget." A friend. Ebony smirks. She suspects it's one of the still anonymous officers or city clerks who silently supported her cause. She slips the phone away, leaning on a railing to watch the water reflect the glimmering city lights. Despite the chaos, she sees an undercurrent of hope. In the morning, Ebony loads her car. Freddie's there to see her off. He's no longer using the cane, moving steadier than before. They embrace, father and daughter, forging a new bond from the adversity they overcame. Ebony climbs into the driver's seat, windows down, inhaling the crisp air. She glances back to see her father standing tall, a half smile of pride on his face, an expression that says everything unspoken. Then she drives off, the road stretching out like an open horizon. She'll return, maybe not as a conquering hero, but as a watchful guardian. Because Ebony Cross has learned that America's battles aren't just overseas, they're in our streets, in our communities, in the hearts of those who have the power to help or harm. And whether wearing a uniform or plain clothes, Ebony remains a soldier of justice. Some battles never truly end. They transform, shift arenas, demand new strategies. Ebony Cross, once known as the deadliest Delta Force commander, discovered that the hardest war is fought without an official war zone, where the lines between friend and foe blur, and the casualties are ordinary citizens living under oppression. In Fairbridge, she didn't just save her father, she reminded an entire city that fear bows to courage. The mission taught her that a single unstoppable will can unravel even the tightest knot of corruption. Some will say she's a hero, but Ebony knows that heroism isn't about accolades. It's about standing when no one else can, about giving a voice to those who've lost theirs. As she leaves Fairbridge in her rearview mirror, she carries a renewed sense of purpose. Her father is safe. The homeless have a chance. The city's uniform is being washed clean from the inside out. Yet, Ebony's story isn't over. She'll be out there, somewhere, ensuring that power is held accountable. The phone calls will keep coming. More cities, more injustices. And Ebony Cross, with her unwavering moral code, will answer. Some nightmares wear badges, but Ebony wears something stronger. An oath to protect, a spirit unbreakable by fear, and a mission that will never end. In this journey, we witness the worst of human greed and the best of human resilience. What lessons emerge from Ebony Cross's battle in Fairbridge? First, justice requires constant vigilance. Even in a place where corruption runs deep, the courage of one determined individual, armed with evidence and moral conviction, can topple powerful forces. Second, redemption is possible, but takes both confession and action. Not everyone found a clean path, like Fisher. But for those who faced their guilt and cooperated, hope remained. Third, we cannot turn away from those who served our country, only to be discarded. Ebony's compassion for homeless veterans lit a spotlight on the systematic failings that keep them on the streets. And finally, the fight against corruption isn't a solo mission. Ebony enlisted help from people at every level: general officers, frightened citizens, compromised cops seeking a way out. Change became unstoppable once they united, each trusting in a shared moral code. This story invites debates on power dynamics. Can local law enforcement ever fully self-regulate, or do we need external, federal oversight? Should society do more for veterans, ensuring they don't end up forgotten on street corners? Is a harsh punishment for one corrupted officer enough to warn others? Or do entire institutions need dismantling and rebuilding? Audiences may argue the merits of Ebony's direct confrontation, or if she risked too much by going undercover alone, but one thing is certain. Ebony's unwavering resolve demonstrates how a single, formidable voice, guided by honor, can reshape a city. And her legacy prompts us to ask ourselves, where do we stand when innocent lives are threatened by those sworn to protect? In Ebony Cross's world, the answer is simple. You stand and fight, no matter the cost,